of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. The word of God to the people of God, to the glory of God. Let the church say amen. Tonight, I would like to take the time to share with you, after a long time of struggling, a conclusion that I had revealed to me. It started many weeks ago when I preached the word, what would it profit a man if he gains the whole world but lose his soul? And what would a man give in exchange of his soul? It started to turn back then of what is this life all about? Specifically, my life. Specifically, your life. What is it all about? What is enough? And when do you get to the place where you have enough? Is it when you have 1,000 in the bank, 10,000 in the bank, 100,000 in the bank? Is it seeing your children get married to a wonderful man or a wonderful woman and you start having grandchildren? At what point in your life can you look at it and say that I have made it? Is it after your first, second, or third degree? Is it after the first, second, or third promotion on your job? At what point in your life do you say, I have made it? I passed the expectation of my father and my mother. I have surpassed the expectations of my siblings. I started off slow, I stumbled, but I got back on track, and now, God, I made it. Well, by the way, the title of the sermon is called Lost. And that's where I want to bring your attention to. Lost. Here you had Jesus speaking first about the parable of the lost sheep and what it means to the man who has 100 sheep. He counts them and he realized one is missing. And he recognized that the sheep that are left, the 99 are okay. He goes out and he begins looking for the one. And when he finds the one, he doesn't just lead it back, he actually puts it upon his shoulder, around his neck, saying, you're not going anywhere. And he brings it back with rejoicing, because I have found that which was lost. And then immediately Jesus begins with another parable, but this time he speaks about a woman who has a coin. And I know what theologians say, and I know what great preachers say. Some of them say it was her marriage endowment. And these coins meant a lot to her because she had to have 10 when she got married. And she realized, if I don't have 10, then I can't get married. I don't know what the significance is other than she lost one of those coins. And she began to look everywhere for it. And I know both you and I can relate to that. We've been in that place before. We misplaced our keys and we tore the house upside and down. We misplaced our pass for the bus and we checked our purse again and again, and our knapsack again and again. And we checked our pockets and we checked, did I wash it? You looked all over it until you found it. Because it was important. But Jesus likens the lost coins not just to some monetary value, but he likens it to a soul that is lost. A soul that is lost. A soul that is lost. Isn't it interesting that Jesus wasn't just speaking about monetary value? He wasn't just speaking about the money. He was speaking about a soul that is lost. Tomorrow makes 17 years since I've been born again. Means a lot. You can blow a whistle, that's great. Means a lot to me. But the funny thing about it, listen. 17 years ago, today, it was a Saturday, and I was in the world still. I can't remember if I was at a club or headed to a club, if I was at home smoking my brain cells out. I don't know if I was watching basketball, playing basketball, if I had chicken wings and french fries with some honey on it, or if I ordered some pizza to my spot. But all I know that 17 years ago today, that if I would have died, I would have split hell wide open with no one to blame. No one to say. Why didn't you tell me that the word was true? Why didn't you tell me that Jesus Christ was Lord? I couldn't blame my biological father. I couldn't blame my mother. 17 years ago, today, December 1st, I would have been lost forever. See, church, one of the worst places to be in this world is outside of the will of God. Did you know that? I'm telling you, there is an eternal ramification for being outside of the will of God at any time, at any season in your life. Once a person breathes their last breath in this side of eternity, it's wrapped for them. And I was lost. And I would have been eternally separated from God. Every cry for mercy, every cry for help, every cry, Jesus, Jesus, would have fell on deaf ears. But I was looking, sort of kind of like that woman. I was looking for my lost coin. I was looking for that truth that would set me free. There's something about being lost. And when you know you're lost, or you know that you have lost something that should be there. I thought it was right over there. The last time I could remember, it was right there. Where is it? Who moved it? Who moved this truth for me? Who told me that the way how I was living was acceptable to God? That God was so good, so kind, that He would not send me or anyone else to an eternity in hell. Those are just some of the thoughts that I was thinking about many years ago, 17 or so. I was thinking that I was set for life, that there was no way a good God, I mean, I wasn't a bad person, I wasn't a murderer, I was just doing my thing. There's no way God would allow me to be lost forever. Listen, I remember it as if it was yesterday, December 2nd. Be truthful with you guys. I wasn't all there. But I went to church. And I sat in the front row. And I heard the preacher preaching. The Holy Spirit started to move inside my heart. Something started to make sense. It started to click again. That God, are you telling me that I'm a sinner and I'm lost, and without you I cannot make it into heaven? There's no way. I'm telling you guys, 17 years ago today, I was lost. But now, by His grace and His mercy, God is saying, let others see the truth. Let others see the truth. When Jesus is speaking about this, the woman who lost her coin, He said this, that she swept the house and she searched carefully until she found it. See, she reasoned in her mind, I believe, that there was no way she left it outside. She remembered bringing it inside, and she looked inside the mirror. It's in here somewhere. Nobody moved and no one gets hurt. And she began to sweep, and she began to search for it, both high and low, in the mattress, in the That is precisely the same attitude that Jesus wants us to do tonight. Start looking for those that are lost. That's my heart. And I pray to God that it never changes. And I tell you guys this now, that if God only gives me 9 people in the church, and that includes my wife and my children, I'm still going to look for the lost. It's the only thing that matters to me is to see young men and young women, old men and old women being saved and sanctified and filled with the Holy Spirit. Church, it's the only thing that really matters. If at the end of their days, do they believe in their heart and confess with their mouth that Jesus Christ is Lord? If not, they'll be lost forever and ever and ever. It's the one thing that matters to God, is sharing the gospel, the good news, to as many people as possible. And as a church, I can say that I'm very proud to be your pastor, because every single time that we have called you guys to come out and to pray, to come out and evangelize, to come out and knock on some doors, they come. Not enough for you, but enough to make a difference. And we have seen the results of people coming into church just because you were willing to go out and forsake yourself. But I got to remind you of certain things, certain truth that the devil does not want you to know, and other churches do not want you to know. Listen to me. At the end of your life, God is not going to ask you which denomination you belong to. God is not going to ask you how high is your vertical, or how much money you have in your bank, or what's the name of your husband. God is going to ask, what have you done with my son and his word? In fact, even now, angels are writing down the very thoughts of your heart to see if this message that has been spoken over you and into you penetrates you to the place where your eyes will be forever open and your hearts will be forever changed. Because the world that we're living in is the Titanic, like I said, is going down. Let me put a pin in it. Last week, Sunday, would have been maybe the 16th, the 17th, the 23rd, the 30th Sunday in a row that I've spoken to the young men and women inside the gym about how short life is. And I told them, and I said, you never know what day it's going to happen. I said, you can get hit by a bullet, God forbid. Even I can get hit by a bullet. Anything can happen, because I understand the kind of neighborhood that we're in. So we had a good time at church. The worship was phenomenal. The praise was great. The word was good. And after we were setting up and heading home, a young man lost his life at the end of a coward's gun. And I'm telling you, I don't know the brother. I don't know him. I don't know anything about the situation. But I wonder if he is not in heaven right now. What would he give to be here right now? What would he give to be in that seat or that seat right now? How much would he be willing to give? Just to have another time to repent. The Bible said, Jesus said, the angels in heaven rejoice over one sinner who repents. One person who says, my God, I'm a sinner, have mercy upon me. How many times have we lost our keys? And how many times have we spent time and energy looking for them? And how many times have we misplaced our wallet and our purses and tearing up the car and the house and everything? How many times have we looked for these things until we found them because they were of value to us? But have you looked around to see how many people are lost and they don't know it? How many people in our own household don't know Christ? And we say to them, no, I don't want to pressure them. And, I don't want to preach to them. And if I keep on asking them to come, they're going to just be turned off. I'm telling you, the only person who smiles when you say that or think that is Satan. Because he said, add another one to my kingdom. Add another one to my kingdom. She's too afraid to witness to her daddy. She's too afraid to witness to her husband. He's too afraid afraid to witness to her. He's too afraid to tell them the truth that Jesus Christ loves you. But I'm telling you, by God's grace and by his mercy, by every fiber in my being, I'm not going to stop preaching and teaching and reaching the lost. Because 17 years ago today, I was on the broad road going to hell. 17 years ago this day, we didn't even know each other. If you looked at me, I was in university, and I was making A's, and I'm telling you, I was tracking my way to become a psychologist. In fact, a few months prior to this, it would have been in September, I was told by my professor there was only 2 people she approached. A brilliant student who was a straight A student since he was in diapers, and myself. You too are going to join me as we push you forward, because we both want to be psychologists. She said, I'm going to put you under my wings. And I was so happy. I said, my goodness, I can't believe it. And I was so happy. 2 months later, I gave my heart to God. And he changed my destiny. Changed me. He changed me. Because I knew I was wicked. I knew I was going to hell. I knew that I was Christless. And in a crisis, the only one I could ever call on was Jesus. But how can they call on him of whom they have not heard? And how can they hear unless someone is sent? And how can they send unless someone preaches? This is the word to them. Church, I'm telling you, it is time for you and I to refocus our life on reaching the lost. Let others see the truth about God and his word. And that's what I love about Jesus. See, all he did, he gave a parable about a woman who lost her coin. And you can understand that the diligence and the meticulousness that she had on searching for, because she said it was important to me. But what is more important than salvation? I mean, think about it. If salvation had to do with finances, listen. If salvation had to do that, before you died, all you had to have in your bank account was $100. That's it. And then you were guaranteed to go to heaven. We would all have that one bank account that had $100 inside. But that'd be foolish. Jesus said, no man comes to the Father unless through me. The only way we can get to heaven is through him. But we got to believe in our heart and confess with our mouth that Jesus Christ is Lord. But once we are saved, once the Holy Spirit has touched us, once we've been convicted and convinced by the Spirit of the living God, what's next? And so often, this is what happens. We find ourselves a little church, and we find ourselves a little community, and that is so important. To be in a Bible-believing church where you feel safe and your children are safe. Look at the children at the back. They're dancing and they're laughing. My little girl's running and she's being chased by another little girl. And it's so beautiful. It's precious. They don't have a clue. They're innocent. And it's so nice that they can be in the house of God. But what's next? What happens when they're 16 and they're still running around the church? That's a problem. What happens when they don't know God for themselves? You and I, we won't speak about it. No, I don't want to say that. But we know what happens to them. We see it all the time. When our loved ones, they're rock hard to God. They won't even come for a baptism or a Christmas. They won't even come. It's like God has offended them. And there we go again. We have to pretend that after they pass away that there were some good people. Listen to me. Listen to me. All my stories are true. By the grace of God, I'm going to have an opportunity to preach a word this Saturday at a funeral. But I'm not even going to tell you this one. There was a woman who I never met 5 years ago. She died. And the preacher who was supposed to preach her funeral was unable to make the funeral. So he he asked me, he said, Reverend Lewis, please can you preach your funeral? And I said, my goodness, I won't preach your funeral. What can you tell me about it? And he gave me some instructions, and when I went there, it was a piece of work. Apparently this woman was involved in a lodge. She was involved with foolishness. And she died in her foolishness. And here you have, I'm telling you, it's different. You have her grieving family there. And you have a young preacher that no one knows their name. And the place is packed. 20, 30 odd people inside there. And there she is lying right there. And I got to preach a word. I was warned though. Make sure no one else comes up and speaks. So the whole time I'm talking, people saying, hey, I want to come up and I want to give a word. I want to share something. But I didn't know why they said, but I was following instruction. Apparently someone wanted to come because there was incantation they had to say to release her spirit to the great my goodness, listen. So here I am. And God gave me a word to speak. So as I'm preaching, I can see people are being upset with the word. Because I wasn't saying she was in heaven. I was saying that I don't know if she's in heaven because I don't know her. Are you going to go there at the end? And as the Holy Spirit started giving me the words to say, I started saying those words. I saw a shift inside the atmosphere. People started feeling uncomfortable. They were like, my goodness, what if what he's saying is true? What if if I die without Jesus in my heart, I'm going to spend an eternity in hell? What if? And at the end of the day, I'm telling you as I'm here today, some people gave their heart to God. Why do I tell you these things? Because tonight, you have to make a decision. Are you going to search for those things that are meaningless? Or are you going to focus on those things that are meaningful? And the only thing in life that matters at the end of the day is your relationship with God. Have you believed in your heart and confessed with your mouth that Jesus Christ is Lord? Are you walking with him? Because Jesus says this, listen, I love this. They're going to say, Lord, 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 didn't we prophesy in your name? And cast out demons in your name? And did all these wonderful miracles in your name? And Jesus said, depart from me, you workers of iniquity. I don't know you. It is the utmost urgency that we set our sights on the lost and those who have gone astray from the house of God. Because both are at risk of eternal calamity. It is up to us who know that God is real, who professes to love him, not only on Sundays, but as soon as we exit through those exit signs, to keep on persisting and warning people and bringing them back to church and be that people at their ankles saying, come back to Jesus, come back, because after that it's just too late. It's too late. It's just too late. I was telling my wife that I've been influenced once again with the things that I've been reading and the things that I've been hearing this week. It's like I have to make sure that I'm right with God again. I'm telling you. And listen, if a pastor is telling you he has to make sure that he's right with God, think about that. I'm not living in sin. I'm not double-dutching. But I also said, my God, I don't want to assume anything. I don't want to assume everything is A-okay. I want to get closer to you. Keep me closer to the fire. Hedge me in, box me in, God. I don't want to slip because the enemy is allowing people to fall in their sin, and then he takes them out. Then he takes them out. It's about that celebrity yesterday who died in a car crash. They said that he's one of the most generous celebrities in the world. He gave over $2.5 million to anytime there was a disaster in the world, he was one of the first to give them money. But I was reading the article to find out if he was saved. Still can't find that part. Please hear me tonight, church. Jesus wants you to know that there's salvation for your soul. Jesus wants you to know there's peace for your troubles. Jesus wants you to know that there's joy for your hearts. Jesus wants you to know that there is wisdom for your decisions. Jesus wants you to know there's healing for your hurt hearts. Jesus wants you to know there's strength for your weaknesses. Jesus wants you to know these things. He is real. He is a Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. But I also know that there are churches that have taken advantage of the sheep. I know that. I know that there are hypocrites in the church, as if there's no hypocrites in the world. But I know there's hypocrites. I know those things, but none of those things are an excuse. Jesus is not saying just because you are part of this church or that church, you automatically get entrance into heaven. It's your relationship with him. I want you to join me in both fasting and I want you to join me in praying and reaching the lost. You can look back these 12 months and I'm telling you, you and I haven't done enough to win souls. We haven't done enough. We haven't done enough. We haven't done enough. We haven't done enough. If we understood the permanency of hell and what that means when a soul is tormented, I'm going to teach on it again by your grace and mercy, God. I'm going to teach and preach on it so you can have a better understanding of the eternal damnation that is for each and every person who doesn't not know Jesus as their Lord and personal Savior. But I digress. So let me show you this again. 17 years ago, tomorrow, I gave my heart to God. On a night like tonight, a time like now, I gave my heart to God. But see, I made a decision before that. I said, God, if I ever come to you, I'm never going to go back. I'm never going to go back to the world, because I knew I would be one of those statistics of that guy who started with God and fell off and the enemy took him out. I knew that. And so by his grace and mercy only, he has sustained me all these years. But there was a time I was kind of wobbling. Just shortly, a few months after I got saved, I was like that shaky tooth or that bummy ankle. And there I was in the midst of my sin, and God gave me a vision. This was the vision. You heard it, but I'm going to tell you it again. There was this beautiful ocean, beautiful body of water, beautiful. And on the water were these islands. And as I could focus on the island, I was far, but I was close. As I was focusing on the island, I could see there were people on it. And every time I saw an island, you saw a person, whether they were barbecuing or just sitting down reading a newspaper. They were just perfect. You wanted to be there. It's almost like looking at a commercial of the Bahamas or Jamaica, the land of the sun and sand. You want to be there. You say, man, I'm going to book my ticket now. Because you wanted to be there. But what they didn't know is that the islands were moving ever slowly to a precipice. And the precipice was far. And it fell off like the Niagara Falls, and the mist was going. But the Holy Spirit told me that was the mist down there with fire. Listen. And just on the other side of the island, there were these people. I mean, millions and millions and millions of people. This is 17 years ago this happened, this vision. There's millions of people, they were pressing, and everyone wanted to go on the island. They wanted to get in there. Every person in the world was trying to sardine themselves to get to these islands. And then you saw a group of people, and all they were doing was waving their hands